Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another daily dose of Dominaria United spoilers. So we've reached day number 2 of spoiler season, and today we got some really sweet stuff to talk about. Some stuff that I think is going to shake up Standard, have a big impact, some sweet commander stuff, one of my favorite Pioneer cards from the set so far, which means we should probably jump right into it. Start talking about sweet new Dominaria United cards. Before we do, 2 quick reminders. Number 1, if you need some more spoilers or want to keep up on them throughout the day, you should head on over to MTGpreviews.com. Number 2, if you need some Dominaria United cards, you can get them from our awesome sponsor, Card Kingdom, over at cardkingdom.com/MTGGoldfish, and even get a free goldfish sticker. Just let them know you want one in your order notes, and they will be happy to hook you up. Anyway, let's talk sweet new cards from Dominaria United. Next up, we got a new Mythic Sphinx, and this one's pretty good. Sphinx of the Clear Skies. So 5 mana, mono blue, 5/5 with flying and ward 2, and then it has Domain. When it deals combat damage to a player, reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put 1 pile in your hand, the other in the graveyard. This is, if you can get full domain of all 5 basic land types, a 5/5 flyer with ward. Then when it hits your opponent, you get to Factor Fiction. Literal Factor Fiction, repeatable every single turn. That means it's a great way to fill your graveyard. It's a great way to generate card advantage. I think this card is actually pretty strong. Of course, it is going to depend on domain. Like, you're gonna need to get a bunch of basic land types. If you have a mono blue deck, this is kind of doing nothing. You're getting a card, I guess. If you're 2 colors, you're probably getting 1 card. But once you get up to 4 basic land types, 5 basic land types, that's where Sphinx is really going to shine. I think that Sphinx of the Clear Skies is really what Imrith wanted to be. It has ward all the time instead of just when it's untapped. It generates better card advantage. It fills your graveyard. So I think this is just like a huge upgrade over Imrith. We saw Imrith see a tiny bit of play while it was legal in Standard, but it hasn't really caught on. I guess the only downside is it's a Sphinx, which is probably a worse creature type than Dragon as far as tribal synergies, but this feels like a great finisher for control decks, a great mid-range threat for domain, like 5-color mid-range style decks. Plus, remember, I view these domain cards is super easy to achieve in Standard because we got all the triomes from Streets to New Capenna, and each of those is 3 basic land types, so you can very easily be getting the full Factor Fiction out of Sphinx of Clear Skies with 2 triomes on the battlefield. That's all you really need. So even if you're not a full-on 5-color deck, it would be easy enough to kind of like splash domain almost off of some triomes. So I think that's really going to power up Sphinx of the Clear Skies in Standard. In older formats, I don't know if it's actually going to make it. I don't think it's a bad card, and when you read it, you're like, oh, I can play this in like a 5-color Niv deck in Pioneer or Explorer, Historic, or Modern. The problem is, Niv is just so strong. Like, Niv generates as much card advantage as Sphinx of the Clear Skies with its ETB trigger, so even if it dies, you're still going to get a whole bunch of cards. Plus, Sphinx isn't a 2-color card, so it doesn't really work in Niv decks, and in older formats, domain decks are just so fast. You got like Sign of Draco as a 4/4 for 2. You got 5/5 for 2 in Territorial Kavu. So I think it's probably just too slow for like modern domain. Maybe there's some weird deck that can make it work in like Explorer or Pioneer, but I think really this is a great finisher for Standard domain 5-color pile decks, and I'm super excited to see the callback to Factor Fiction coming back to Standard. We also got Nemata Primeval Warden, and this is another card that I think is sneakily powerful. So it's 4 mana Golgari Legendary Tree Folk. It's a 3/4 with reach. It says if a creature an opponent control would die, exile it instead, and when you do, you create a 1/1 green Saproling creature token. Then you can pay a green, sack a Saproling, pump it +2/+2. You can pay 1 and a black, sack 2 Saprolings to draw a card. So Nemata, this is very reminiscent of a card that just came to Magic Arena for the first time, and is very, very strong in formats like Pioneer, even shows up a little bit in Modern, and that is Kalitas, Trader of Get. So you've got a lot of similarities here. They're both 4-drops, they're both 3/4s. You trade in lifelink lifelink on Kalitas for reach on Nemata, and then you have an ability where you're hating on your opponent's graveyard. As their stuff dies, it's getting exiled instead of going to the graveyard, and then you're getting tokens for it, and then you can turn your Kalitas tokens into a bigger Kalitas, essentially, and Nemata can turn its tokens into a bigger Nemata, or into card advantage. So I think this is going to do something very similar to Kalitas. I think the downgrade is going from lifelink to reach. Reach is nice, but part of the upside of Kalitas is it's a great card against aggro. You slam it against aggro, 3-4 lifelink, dodges lightning bolt, really hard for red decks to deal with. Nemata's not going to be as good against aggro, but it's a very comparable card, and it's going to be legal in standard, which is kind of huge. We already have some stuff that cares about the graveyard in standard, like Blitz, for example. If your opponent blitzes something, when it dies, they're going to draw the card, then like Tenacious Underdog can keep coming back from the graveyard. If you got Nemata out, that's not going to happen. Your opponent blitzes, Tenacious Underdog going to get exiled, you're going to get a 1-1, or maybe Zombies takes off now that we have a smaller standard in rotation. Remember, most of the good zombies are from Innistrad. They're staying in standard, and they have stuff like Archghoul of Thraben that cares about the graveyard, or maybe AO and the rest of this Dragon Spirit cycle, they all have powerful death triggers. Nemata's going to shut that down. You're not getting the death triggers because it's a replacement effect, so they're going to exile. So to me, this is like standard Kalitas that also seems like a sweet card for Saproling tribal decks in Commander. I've always tried to make Saproling tribal work. If you look at Commander Clash, I've done it multiple times. I don't think I've ever won with Saprolings. They're a pretty underpowered tribe, but Nemata is a pretty sweet option, either as the leader of your Saproling deck, or throw it in the 99 of like Slimefoot, Gave, Felon. It's in the right colors. It works with the theme of the deck. It works with the Saproling plan. Also worth mentioning, just in case this isn't clear, in a format like Commander, if you play Nemata and there's a big board of creatures, and then you like Toxic Deluge or Damnation, you will get Saproling tokens from all of those things that are dying. Even if you kill your Nemata along the way, you're still going to get those triggers. So we've seen Kalitas do that before on Commander Clash. You play Kalitas, you wrath the board, you end up with a huge amount of zombies. Nemata can do the same sort of thing with Saprolings, which is pretty powerful. So Nemata, this to me feels like standard Kalitas, probably going to be very effective as a mid-range card there. A sweet option for Commander decks if you're built around Saprolings, and maybe some option for formats like Pioneer or Explorer, even though once you get back there, it might just be a little bit worse than Kalitas overall since it's lacking lifelink. We also got Astor, Bearer of the Blades, which is one of my favorite Pioneer cards from the set so far. So a 4-mana 4/4 Legendary Human Warrior. When it ETBs, you look at the top 7 cards of your library, you can reveal an equipment or vehicle from among them, put them in your hand, the rest go on the bottom in a random order, and then it says, equipment you control have equip costs of 1, and vehicles you control have crew costs of 1. And it's really those last line of text, combined with the ETB, which means hopefully this is going to be doing something even if it dies, but it's those last lines of text that really make me excited about this card. So a while ago, we played Pioneer Hammer Time, and the deck wasn't bad. The deck was able to win some games, it did some cool things, but it felt like it was missing a pure steel paladin kind of creature, a creature that would let you equip your hammer for free. Astor's, it's not pure steel, it's 4 mana, but it's very similar. Like ETB, you get to draw your Colossus Hammer, hopefully, and then you get to equip your hammer for 1 mana. So I think this is probably one of the missing pieces of making Pioneer Hammer Time work, especially since it's a warrior, and Pioneer Hammer Time does have a warrior sub-theme. The other place I'm hyped about this card is the Mr. Plow deck in Pioneer. We played this Mr. Plow vehicle deck that was actually surprisingly good. It was using like Colossus Plow, Consulate Dreadnought, these really overpowered cheap vehicles that have super high crew costs, and then we're trying to crew them with Peace Walker Colossus or like Armed in Armor to turn them into creatures until end of turn. Astor's is also perfect for this deck. Turning your Colossal Plow into crew cost of 1 or Consulate Dreadnought into crew cost of 1. Incredibly scary, especially combined again with that ETB that's going to dig for your best vehicles. As far as standard is concerned, I feel like this might be a little bit of a plant for the future. Remember, we're heading into heavy artifact world. Right now we're in Dominaria United, which is a legend theme set, but we're heading into Brothers War, artifact theme set. We're heading to Phyrexia, artifact theme set. So I feel like this is a card that's going to get a lot better in standard. Once we get a couple more sets, who knows? Like traditionally Mirrodin / Phyrexia is where the sword cycle comes from, like Sword of Fire and Ice. Maybe Wizards like completes the sword cycle, puts them into standard, which would be wild. But if we do get equipment on that level, then Astor's is going to look even better. For now, it can be a pretty good option for a vehicle deck. You know, crewing your Mech Titan or Bankbuster or Surge Hacker Mech on the cheap, digging for him with the ETB. So maybe some sort of like Boros vehicles deck could be a thing in the meantime, but I think this is a card that has potential to be pretty strong in standard once we get a couple more sets. As far as Commander is concerned, I feel like this is a lower tier Boros equipment commander. It's not bad, and I imagine you jam this in the 99 of a ton of Boros equipment decks, but Boros equipment is a pretty heavily supported theme, and I'm just not sure the Astors is going to keep up with like Wylith, pretty busted, Akiri's very strong, Bwainer, Kroll, various Arden partner pairings with Rogak or Akiri. So I think that it's a fine like mid-powered Boros equipment commander, but honestly, I'm more excited to jam this in the 99 of my Wylith deck and be able to like equip everything for 1 mana, or in the 99 of my Bwainer deck, and my Akiri deck. So fine as a commander, probably even more important for like Historic Brawl where there's not as many options, but in commander, looking at this mostly as a sweet 99 card. So Astor's maybe my favorite Pioneer card from the set so far. We're gonna have to revisit some of those decks, see how much Astor's powers them up, plus a little bit of standard potential, especially in the future once we get some more powerful equipments and vehicles. Next up, we got a pretty powerful 2-drop for some sort of domain aggro deck in standard, Radha's Firebrand. So a 2-mana 3/1 human warrior. When it attacks, target creature defending player controls with power less than Radha's power can't block this turn. And then domain of 6 mana, Radha's Firebrand gets +2/+2 until end of turn, but it costs 1 less to activate for each basic land type among lands you control. Can only use it once each turn. So that last ability, if you can get all the basic land types, maybe with the help of Triomes, it's going to be 1 mana get +2/+2, which turns it into a 5/3 with the upside of making something not block. And this kind of reminds me of like the standard version of Territorial Kavu. It's not as good as Territorial Kavu, which is often just a 5/5 by like turn 2, turn 3, which is kind of absurd. But Radha's Firebrand is the standard version of it. Territorial Kavu would be too strong, I think, in standard. Like, it's a Modern Horizons card. It does see play in Modern. Radha's Firebrand, not as good, but something that's kind of comparable. You can make it into a 5-power threat, plus has some upside when it attacks, which reminds me a lot of Territorial Kavu. Plus, we've seen red aggro threats that can make a defender not block be very good in standard over the years. I think like Frenzied Goblin back in the day on Crop Crasher was a staple of the Hazoret red decks in Amonkhet standard. Gaiable and Heel Cutter, that even saw play. You can dash it into play, make something not block. So that ability is something not to sleep on. In an aggro deck, getting a blocker out of the way for a turn is really, really devastating. It allows you to keep attacking to pour on that damage to close out the game, even through blockers, before your opponent can find a Wrath and stabilize. So I think that Radha has potential to be very, very good in standard, just as a generic red aggro threat. It's going to be at its best if you got some Triomes to pump it on the cheap and whatnot, grow its power. But even without that, a 3/1 that when it attacks, make a blocker not block, that could still be a good threat in a standard mono red deck. We also got the green member of our pseudo Phyrexian mana cycle, Defiler of Vigor, and this card is kind of bonkers. 5 mana 6/6 Phyrexian Wurm with trample. It is the additional cost to play green permanent spells. You can pay 2 life. Those spells cost 1 green mana less for the life that you paid, only reduces the amount of green mana that's paid. And then when you cast a green permanent spell, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. This card is kind of insane. We saw the Sphinx yesterday, the mono blue version of this, and we thought it was pretty good. Like, he can do some cool things. Defiler of Vigor, though, I'm even more excited for a couple of big reasons. One is, its body is really good. I looked back through Magic's history, and I could only find 1 5 mana 6/6 trampler in mono green, which was Elder Gargaroth. And we saw Elder Gargaroth be a very effective card in standard. It still shows up a little bit in older formats on occasion. So when you're starting off with a comparison to Elder Gargaroth, you're already in a pretty good place. Of course, Elder Gargaroth can generate card advantage or gain life. Defiler of Vigor isn't going to do that. Actually, it's going to lose you life, but it ramps you, which is powerful, and it grows your creatures, which is really powerful. So I think this could be a part of mono green Stompy in standard. We still have a lot of good pieces for a mono green deck. We're losing some all-stars, of course, like Azeka's Chariot, Ranger class. They're going to be gone. However, we still got Jeweled Thief, which ramps you into Defiler Vigor a turn early with the treasure, which is good. We got Uvenwald Oddity. So I could see some sort of rebuilt mono green Stompy, mono green aggro deck. Really loving Defiler of Vigor. The other thing to mention about this is you don't really have to be mono green. If you're playing this, you want to be mostly green, but it seems like it synergizes pretty well with some of the 3 color cards that we got from Streets of New Capenna. Probably the best option is like Falco. Falco really wants counters on things because you can remove the counters to cast stuff from the top of your deck. Defiler of Vigor, really good at putting counters counters on things, and you can still use its weird Phyrexian mana ability to like reduce the cost on Falco. Falco's gonna be 3 mana and 2 life, which is pretty nice. Or like Broker's Ascendancy, another way to put counters on things, gonna be 2 mana and 2 life. So I think the Defiler of Vigor could work really well there. Could also see playing it in some sort of Naya deck. You got like Jetmir, Fleetfoot Dancer, Ginny Fae. These are all cards that Defiler can reduce the cost of. And then imagine like your Fleetfoot Dancer coming down for 3 mana, like a 3 mana 4/4 trample lifelink haste. That's already really good. And then as you're casting more green permanent spells, you're going to be putting counters on your Fleetfoot Dancer, on your Jetmir. You're going to close out the game super quickly. So Defiler of Vigor seems like a card that has a ton of potential in Standard, and I think you can play this in +1/+1 counter decks in Commander as well. Obviously, it's not a legend, so it's not going to lead your deck, but if you're playing Kadama the Westry, if you're playing Vorinclex, if you're playing Mawu, these mono green +1/+1 counter decks, I don't know why you wouldn't play this card. It's a ramp spell, it's also putting counters on all your stuff, synergizing with your, Vorinclexes or whatever, and I think just like we talked about in Standard, if your deck is green focused, you can still play Defiler of Souls, even if you're not mono green. Like, if you're a green heavy Atraxa counter deck, or a green heavy Hama's counter deck, or Halana and Alina deck, I think the Defiler of Vigor is fine there as well. The ability to put a counter on everything every time you cast a green permanent is super busted. It's going to grow your team super fast, and you already start off with a good body. So Defiler of Vigor, I'm really high on this card. To me, this feels like a card that at a minimum has a chance to be great in Standard and multiple archetypes, and as a 5 mana 6/6, maybe it can even catch on a little bit in a format like a Pioneer, maybe even Modern, and definitely in counters decks in Commander. We also got a handful of lower rarity cards that deserve a shout out because they might actually do something in Standard or other formats. Number 1, a reprint in Lightning Strike. In Lightning Strike, it's probably weird to get excited about a 2 mana Lightning Bolt, but it's been like a decade since Lightning Bolt's been in Standard, so this is about as good as it gets for Standard burn spells, and I feel like we have the pieces to maybe make Standard burn work after rotation. Alongside Lightning Strike, we got Play with Fire, another Pioneer playable burn spell, Chandra Dress to kill, one of the key planeswalkers in mono red in older formats. We got Thermo Alchemist and Kessig Flamebreaker to add more damage to our burn spells as we cast them. So it's going to be interesting to see if we can actually make burn work in Standard. I think that Lightning Strike might make it possible, but we'll have to do some brewing after we see the full set and see how good it looks. We also got Resolute Reinforcements, a 2 mana 1/1 flash human soldier that when it ETBs you make a 1/1 white human soldier creature token, which means this is essentially Raise the Alarm, except it comes on a body. Normally this wouldn't make a huge difference. I mean, they're both 2 mana instants essentially that put 2 1/1s on the battlefield. Raise the Alarm has long been a staple in token decks in various formats. Being a creature can be an upside in the right deck. Being a creature means that Resolute Reinforcements works with Oketra's Monument, let's say, to make even more tokens. White Mainline can bounce it to recast it. Panharmonicon can double it up. These are all things that don't really work with Raise the Alarm. So even though it's really just a Raise the Alarm, being a creature is an interesting twist that might open up some possibilities that just really aren't there for this spell version of the effect. We also got Micromancer, which this one's probably a long shot to see play, but it can do something kind of funny. So it's a 4 mana 3/3 human wizard. When it ETBs, you can search your library for an instant or sorcery card with mana value of 1, reveal it, and put it in your hand and then shuffle. So in Standard, not super interested in this card. However, in Modern or in Historic, there is an interesting synergy with Ephemerate. Ephemerate is a 1 mana instant that blinks a creature and has rebound, so it can blink the creature twice. So what we can do is Micromancer, tutor up Ephemerate, Ephemerate blink Micromancer to tutor up something else. We can snag like a Thoughtseize to attack our opponent's hand, a Fatal Push to kill something. And then once the Ephemerate's rebound happens, we can use Micromancer to tutor up another Ephemerate and repeat the process. So it's this weird grindy value engine. It is just a hill giant. Is a 4 mana 3/3 going to be good enough to make this plan work? We'll have to wait and see, but if you can get this going in the right deck, it is a really interesting stream of value in formats that have Ephemerate available. Wrapping things up with some more lower rarity stuff. There's a kind of interesting cycle of commons that all cost a ton of mana, but get a big discount based on what you got going on in your graveyard on the battlefield. So Tolarian Terror, 7 mana 5/5 Ward 2, but it costs 1 less to cast for each instant or sorcery in your graveyard. So if you get 6 instant or sorceries in the graveyard, it's a 1 mana 5/5 Ward 2, a Molten Monstrosity, 8 mana 5/5, but it costs X less to cast, where X has the greatest power among creatures you control. So if you got a 7 power creature, this is the 1 mana 5/5 Trample, Writhing Necromass, 7 mana 5/5, but 1 less to cast for each creature in your graveyard with Death Touch. So again, do a bunch of self-milling. This could be really cheap. It'll be interesting to see just how good these cards are. I think they could have potential in Pauper in specific, where big threats like this are kind of highly valued, and it doesn't seem that hard to turn them on. Plus, they're kind of like fun build-arounds in Limited, maybe in Standard, where you can do some really explosive things. Like, imagine a world where you get a bunch of creatures in your graveyard, and you get a big threat on the battlefield, and you just like dump your hand of 4 Molten Monstrosities and Writhing Mass all in the same turn and build this massive board. So I really like this cycle. Just how strong they are, well, we're gonna have to play with them to really find out, but I think there's some potential here. We also got just a ton of random comments and comments. Not that all this stuff is bad, but most of it's going to be the stuff that rounds out your decks in Limited type of thing. There are some uncommon legends, which maybe will be interesting for Historic Brawl. So stuff to keep in mind for Draft in specific. And then finally, we're still getting more Dominaria United Commander cards, mostly these box toppers. So you're going to get, whenever you crack open a box, you get one for free as a nice little bonus. Plus today, we're getting the Commander Precons. There's 2 Commander Precons coming with this set. We're getting the full list today, so if you want more on those, Tomer's working on spoiler videos over at MTGGoldfish Commander. They should be out later today, so keep an eye out on the Commander channel if you want to see more on all the sweet Commander cards coming from the set. Anyway, that brings us to the end of our daily Dominaria United spoiler video for today. So what do you think? What's your favorite card from today? How amazing is this set? This set has some of the best nostalgia, some of the best flavor we've seen in a long time, and some of the cards, whew, they just look so powerful. This is going to be a really interesting, powerful Standard, and we've been talking a lot about formats like Pioneer, Explore. I think we're going to see a big shakeup there as well because of Dominaria United. So let me know what you think about all these amazing cards. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll be back tomorrow with more daily Dominaria United spoilers. So until then, have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.